TV 79, are you ready? You are ready to go. All right, we will call this meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission to order. It is, I like how you started your meeting, it's January 16th, 2019, and this is a regular meeting of the Darien Parks and Recreation Commission. Okay, so, the first order of business is the approval of the December 12th minutes. Everybody's had a chance to review them. We had a couple of things, but let's hear from other people first. Yeah, Jim, the only couple things I saw is on the update on the pilot program that we, you refer to Chip, who, like, we know who Chip is, but minute readers might not know who Chip is, so, I just want to clarify that. And then on page 3, kind of in the middle, right before the section where it says, Ms. Daly moved to approve, there's a sentence that says, lastly, Ms. Geary reiterated the additional full-time position, definitely justifying the additional staff member. I'm like, not quite sure what that means. Okay. Sort of like, we're justifying the additional position is justified by needing the additional position. I don't know, it's sort of circular, so.
Got it, okay.
But do you remember what you were trying to say?
I was still busy handing out things, so.
Okay.
Yes, I completely agree.
I'm still not sure what you were trying to say there.
Go there and
Last up was
Definitely
here,
Oh, down here.
full-time position, definitely justifying the additional staff member.
Oh, Ms. Geary was reiterating, definitely justifying the additional staff member in the budget, which is the new staff member that we're looking for the full-time park crew.
Okay, that's
So
all
just
I have.
justifying it.
So we'll clean up that sentence. If I can have a motion to approve the minutes as amended, Amy, second please. All in favor? Opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, we do have some visitors this evening. Do we have any public comment?
We're all on the RTM, we just come to.
You're just hanging out.
Because
We're at Dow this week, so.
We're Parks and Rec, Public Works and F&B.
Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec, Public Works.
Parks and Rec.
That's what it
Oh,
was.
yeah.
And F&B.
Change from what you and I spoke.
I wasn't sure because I didn't get it.
Thanks for coming.
Okay, okay, so no public comment. Next we had on, Pam and I talking about how we lay out the agendas going forward. What I've suggested to her is that we tend to have action items that are going to require a vote more at the beginning of the meeting. So on that basis, we had put discuss and take action on the running path of the Diller property, because Pam previous had a confirm on the 9th that the superintendent of schools would be joining us, but I subsequently had some email communications back and forth with the chairman of the Board of Ed, who said that they were not prepared to send him yet, that they felt it was too early in the process. So there's no action items, but Pam, if you want to give an update on where we are, it's definitely, it is moving forward, and there's support from the Board of Ed.
I spoke with Mark Babel today, and what's happening is the Board of Ed isn't feeling as if the donation is ready to be donated, accepted. So there's other areas to go through, and they would like to get the green light here from the commission for them to move forward with P&Z application getting filled out and then being reviewed by myself and Elliot and Jamie Stevenson, and at least get that signed off on, so that they can continue on with the process in order to then be able to go back to the Board of Ed with the full proposal, the donation, for them to accept it, and then come back full circle to the commission.
So as I understood the information I got from the email exchange back and forth, the Board of Ed is really looking at the Diller piece as it's kind of separate. So they're almost seeing this as two projects. It just happens that the whole running loop will connect, but they're somewhat of the approach that, you know, the Park and Rec, you can approve there's running path being built on your property. You know, when we have all our ducks in a row, we'll approve the running path being built around the school property. and that sometime, at some point, we will need to come to you to request that the students be allowed to hold races on and train on your park. But as far as kind of a joint approval of the project and whatever, it does not appear that they feel that's necessary. So it's a little bit split, so we don't, that's why they're really not coming to us for an approval now, because they said, once we have a path, then we'll come, you know, and you have a path, we'll come and say, you know, can our kids use your path?
Do we have any other situation where the schools use our property for any sort of athletics or
Tennis courts?
tennis courts?
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah, oh, so it would uphold the same sort of process, right?
Right.
What is the holdup then for them?
I don't think there's any real holdup, it's just that there's a number of steps that the Athletic Foundation has to go through P&Z approval and just the various different approvals to say that it's a viable project, that it can be done according to the proper specifications and passing all the regulation, and once it's all like buttoned up and tied up with a bow, then the Athletic Foundation will go to the school and say, okay, here's a completed project with all the approvals, we want to give this project to you, do you accept it?
Okay, so
But
they
it's
wanted
not
to get all the
there
approvals
yet.
first before they get from the actual approval from Board of Ed.
Right,
Like,
I
our
can
part has
actually
to be
call it a
final.
donation, it's not a donation yet,
Right.
because they haven't gotten all their approvals yet.
That being said, the Board of Ed did give them the conceptual,
Right.
okay. I mean,
They gave the okay to
yeah,
go
I saw
forward.
it in the Stanford
Awesome.
Advocate, they said, yeah, we like it, you know, go forth and do your homework and get your approvals, but they conceptually were like, yeah, we think this is a great thing, but. it's
But
just
they
not-
want the town, like the regulatory
P&Z,
boards to
EPC.
be,
Correct.
weigh in first and before.
Correct.
Do we need to wait for that weigh-in for what we're approving, or does it matter, like for what
I
we're doing?
don't know that it matters. The one open item we did have with the Athletic
Parking,
Foundation
right?
was the parking, and they've,
Right.
as far as I know, they've not yet come back to us
They-
with a definitive parking plan.
They just sent a plan,
Okay.
and Joe, they marked in the 6 spaces,
Right,
and I can bring that at the next meeting.
just wondering where they went with
Yeah,
that.
I can bring that at the next meeting.
Because that sidewalk is there where the kids walk,
Right,
you know, through
right.
home. on
They
the
have a
Nutmeg.
sidewalk, they have 6 spaces,
Yeah,
they
and
did
that,
all
that,
that.
actually, that area gets very congested during
Mhm.
pickup and drop-off periods, so that would be my only
Right,
concern.
so we'll need to see that and then make sure that we're comfortable with that layout, but then in some ways, what we would be voting on, you know, sort of our, is almost like it's almost like a
Like
discrete
discrete
project as
project,
opposed to,
right,
we
yeah.
were, I think, at least I was going to speak for
Right, but I
everybody.
think they kind of wanted
Of a
them,
big project, we really just have to opine on our project and then subsequently say, yeah, you guys can use it.
I think their concern was if we don't get our approval, then there's kind of the whole point of the project becomes harder to, you know,
Right.
like, is that the length won't be there for that
Right.
kind of course.
So she and I exchanged, it seems like everybody is conceptually on board, that this is a good project, that people would like to see it move forward, but as you know, with any of these projects, there's just
Right,
lots,
right.
a lot of layers.
I mean, the concern, I mean, my only thing is, like, I don't mind, I think we should go forward, but this type of thing gets used a lot for fall track, for fall cross-country, I should say. And, you know, there's so many holdups, and I don't know how how long it's gonna take to.
Right,
build.
that's why they want us to at least get the green light to go ahead and
I
look at
agree.
the P&Z and EPC application.
We won't
and
be
have
held up
it get
there.
signed
No,
off
we
on
won't
it.
be the whole.
DAF also said that they would be willing to donate benches within our parcel too.
Oh, great, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a nice, I looked through there, now that the leaves are down, it could use a face, like, it needs to be used, it's
Right,
really,
yeah.
it's a
No,
lot
I-
of property
yeah.
too.
And this is the way to use it.
Right,
I
I
think it's
think
great.
Mary was
Excellent.
concerned that we needed sort of an official ask, and that's what Pam's been working behind the scenes in the last month to accomplish, and Dr. Landon had said he would come do that official ask, but I think as more parties get involved, it was just, that's,
Yeah,
you know, it's just not like the right, it's out of order. I think we
Okay.
just did like, they're like, nope, that's out of order, it's not. So,
so do we still need to vote?
no, so there's nothing to vote on this evening, but when we put out the agenda, we believed he was coming to make this ask, and I subsequently got a note from
So they're gonna go to P&Z then?
the Athletic Foundation will present.
On our behalf.
We're all going tomorrow. We'll have a rep from the Park and Recreation, Jenny Flynn will go, a rep from DAF, and Joe Canis tomorrow to meet with Jeremy, just
For a meeting.
talk about the application. But tonight, they really want the go-ahead from Parks and Rec Commission to allow me and Elliot, superintendent of schools, and Jamie Stevenson to go over the filled out application, review it and sign it.
So what did we do before? What permission did we give them before? Like, what is that different from what you're asking for tonight? Because it sounded like we gave them.
We gave them permission to go to the Board of Ed,
Ed.
and that's where we went. We went to the Board of Ed, they asked.
I thought it was more than permission.
Yeah,
to
I've
go to Board of Ed.
reread
It wasn't
the
just
question.
like,
Go ahead.
I haven't
We told them that
overbroad
they
it,
could go to Board
but-
Ed, they could go to the Board Ed when
Okay,
they want to.
But
So
I've
I feel like
read
we did
the
this.
minutes in October, and I felt that where we are now, that we are fine.
Okay, so they can just go to P and Z, you're saying, we don't need to vote on anything tonight?
I don't believe so.
I didn't think
I
so
could agree
either,
with
'cause I
that.
feel like
I
we
don't
gave them
believe
enough
so, based on
leeway.
how our minutes were,
Worded, I think
how
you're
it was
right.
worded. But the outstanding issue is the parking, but that's, the parking really has to be clarified, I think, in conjunction with meeting with P and Z,
Right.
and making sure that
Right.
they say, yes, you can put
Exactly.
parking spaces
And then we'll come
here,
back.
or if there's a wetlands issue or whatever, and, you know, if
That's
there's
true.
some issue
I
within the
remember-
wetland or whatever.
And I'm assuming the Board of Ed will look into what Susan raised, the traffic issue, which I think is, it is a press point there. It's a constricted area over there. So I'm assuming they're gonna review that. We're not gonna need to review that.
I agree.
So that's where we are. It's moving through the system, but I think it's gonna take a few more months anyway, would be my
Right.
guess. But we'll keep this on for next month, because you'll have had some more meetings on it,
Exactly.
and then we can get an update. Okay, the next item is to discuss and take action on the 2019-2020 park fee schedule.
So I sent you the fees and added the column for 1920. And the only changes in here, and I
2020?
Oh,
I see.
Yeah, it is.
It's like, wait a second. Gotcha.
And so, I should have highlighted, but just the last two rows on the bottom, holiday paddle building rental and kayaks rack storage fee, April 15th through November 15th, is we felt needed to be addressed, and actually added to the list. Kayak rack storage fee, we felt that last year we, sold out in a matter of hours, a couple hours, and 100 people on the waiting list. And we had two different fees, and it was confusing. There was one space, it was hard for us to manage, so if somebody, did the one kayak fee, then we had to keep going down and saying, well, they only had one, they had two. We think it's best just to leave it at one flat fee, $200 a space. If they wanna squeeze 3 in there,
Three
they-
paddle
How many
boards.
spaces do we have?
that's up to them.
How many spaces?
We have 30,
Oh.
Right, 30, yeah.
yep.
What was it, so what was the original, what did you offer people for this year again? The
It
first
was
one,
it was
I'm sure it was
150.
and then an extra one was an additional amount, I remember, because we
I
had
believe
two.
the additional was 200 to have two, I believe so, so we
You
just
just make it
figured we
easier
could
for yourself
say
to say.
200, that's
But if
it,
you have-
easier.
The way you enforced it was that you gave everybody a sticker for each one.
Right.
So how would you change that? If you're just charging for the space?
Yeah, I'm not certain,
You might not give stickers, or you have to look at that.
or three with the same number
Got
maybe,
it. Okay, just one,
that's a
yeah.
The
possibility.
boat club does, because I have two hot kayaks there, what they do is, so let's say my kayak rack is $275, they just give me 2 stickers that say $275.
Oh,
That's what I
good.
said,
So
yeah.
that's-
So
that
you
works.
don't, you charge per space and not per kayak.
This year, you-
This year,
That's
we're
Pam's
recommending that.
proposal.
So are we going to lose money because
we're gonna make
last
money.
year we
we make money.
charged per kayak?
Yeah.
No, you make
No.
money. Because last year they charged like,
We less for one and then
Yeah.
the higher amount for two, but not everybody had two,
yeah, most people had one.
yeah.
Most people had one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
we
are
were
you,
paying, we were
did
paying
you, are,
150.
if you looked at the figures, are you sure they're even? I mean, did you look at those numbers?
Yeah, I mean, we brought in like $5,300 in terms of it, and we couldn't tell you today whether the person
would've been
did one
6,000.
and had 3 in there, because we weren't monitoring it every single day.
I see.
So it was just it was too much to go down there and have to figure out what
I
other
think it
people
was
were.
good. I think your
Can you
plan
make
is
that a
good.
responsibility of the lifeguards?
I'll talk to Jim about that. They got a pretty big job, so.
But
it's
it
possible.
doesn't take much to just go look quickly.
Well, we have our public works department too that goes down there. Now it would be a little easier.
Yeah.
With this, we wouldn't need to worry about that.
I think, I like
We
your
do
plan.
200 per spot, and then we don't
You don't
have
have
to
to worry
manage it. Yeah, because I'm telling you, even the rack, that was hard. Going down, making sure everyone had a sticker, because it would change. And, you know, you're pulling them up, they're heavy, sometimes the stickers are on the bottom. So that was, you know, that's difficult to manage throughout the whole summer too. I mean, we still do it, but
It's a better idea, it's a round number,
I
and
think
you
it's
know you're
easier for our
guaranteed
staff all
$6,000
around, yeah.
to do that, versus you said you're only gonna be 5,300 this year.
Right, and we are, right now, it's not confirmed, but we feel as the, you know, in the office, that there are over 100 people on the waiting list, that obviously there's a huge need in town for it. So we're looking to see if our staff I reached out to you about an Eagle Scout.
Yeah.
If there's another Eagle Scout project, fantastic, we would love, you know, one. If not, we are looking in to see if our park crew can make it a winter project to build a couple and put them
Great
at
idea.
Wee Beach.
Mhm.
Because
I
there's
think
a
those
need.
will go too.
Yeah, well, they would go in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So I haven't got confirmation on that yet, but I think it would be a great idea, especially if the snow holds off. Right?
Well,
A
we'll
couple
see.
of months without snow
Yeah, you
could
could-
lead for a good project for
Oh,
the
yeah, that's a
crew.
good call.
Yeah, so that's that, and then,
Pam,
oh, sorry.
when you say holiday paddler, can you define, are we gonna have a set dates that say, okay, these are the holidays, this covers, because different people could interpret holidays meaning different.
I think that's a great idea. Jim was leaning on, you know, Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, because those are only two that we have opened up on. But that was new. Apparently before those rentals, they did not open up the doors to any holiday rentals, and I'm certainly glad that they have. You know, I felt that we should open that door as long as we could staff it. We can't guarantee every year that we'll find staff for it, but so far we have. So if they're willing to work and they want the money and we can accommodate a party, I think it's a great idea. So far, those 2 nights we were looking at, but certainly I mentioned to Jim, you know, what about July 4th? That's possible that someone might want to go out July
Memorial
4th.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean, so does
yeah.
holiday mean, I mean, Veterans Day is a holiday. I
No
mean,
Christmas.
Thanksgiving is
No
a holiday,
Thanksgiving.
so I just think we need to
Yeah,
clarify
I think
what
so
we
too.
mean by holiday. Are you literally meaning holidays, or are you meaning kind of around holidays?
Got it.
Well, why don't we define that?
Okay.
Because I think, you know, no Christmas.
So it's just right, not including Christmas?
Not included.
Holidays not included,
Right,
is that
holidays not
easier?
included.
But again, does a holiday mean, say Veterans Day falls on a Saturday? I mean, that's legally a holiday.
Veterans
that
Day
your-
is fine.
But no, is that your intention? That that's
Yes.
considered?
Yes, holidays, any holiday.
Okay,
I mean,
so you mean any
but
legal
major
holiday.
holidays, I think is what we were saying is, we're saying no to major holidays, like Christmas. Very hard to find staff for a Christmas Day, Thanksgiving Day, perhaps Easter.
Why? I'm trying to remember how we structured it when we actually originally put this together. Do you remember? I was just trying to remember, because I just vaguely remember that we had some we had said there was a cleaning fee, like not only is there this type of thing, then is there another cleaning fee on top of this? I can't remember. Like a staff fee, off-season?
No,
Because I remember thinking, wow, it's a lot of money to rent off-season for the party, because you have to have a special, you know, it's one thing to have it during paddle season when you have
our staff member there.
your staff member
Yeah.
there, I can't remember, you have a name for them, but.
Marcello, or Paddle
No, I meant
Paddle
attendant, I'm sorry, that's the word I was
Yes.
looking for.
Yes.
And that off-season, you didn't have that, and as a result, that you would have to charge a fee for cleaning.
Well, we do have to, right, exactly,
So
because the
that's-
building's being cleaned seasonally anyway, right, on top of it, but we do have to bring in cleaners in
But
off-season.
off-season.
Yes.
And that's what you charge people for when they rent off-season. And that's not on this either, or is that part of the $100
It's
off-season?
part of that,
Per hour, off-season. But wasn't there a minimum too? I don't know.
minimum 3 hours,
So that's also for off-season rentals, minimum 3 hours.
yes.
Okay. I just trying to figure out how specifically we want to get into this fee schedule, so, yeah,
Right.
because that's not included here either. That
I
goes
think
with
there
the
should be some discretion of the office too, though, there might
Yeah.
be, you know, but I just think for holidays, I
Dawn, why don't you keep
think
that,
it
I'm
has
just
to be
saying,
3 hours
But
to
why don't
get
you-
someone to come out
my-
on a holiday.
my question to you is, why don't you keep that discretion then? I just think that if we're gonna get so specific on this fee
Right.
schedule, for specific cases,
Right.
for specific 3 days out of
I
the year,
agree
it
with
becomes a
you.
little bit
I agree with you,
strange.
because if we have, again, if we have the staff to work it and we can
Right.
accommodate the
And
resident.
you, and it depends on
we
how
will.
they falls on a Saturday or Sunday, you know,
Right.
what Lori's.
And we will accommodate, so I think we should leave it
I
to
just
the
think
discretion of the office.
Why, Jim, why would you even have a holiday paddle building rental thing on this fee?
Because of the fee is different,
It's
I
gonna always
guess
be
my
a higher
next
rate.
question
it's
is,
a higher,
how'd you
But it's
come
really
up with
$200 an hour during
That's-
the holiday
Like-
on peak.
it was on top of, it was 150, right?
I don't remember
I
now.
believe it's 150 an hour, but we didn't have a rate for holiday, put it that way.
Ever. Oh, I see what you're
So
saying.
here we are for a holiday to try to get our
Struggling.
staff to come out, it was.
So you just pay them more money,
We
basically,
would,
if they're available.
we would pay our staff more money, right, to come out on
It has to be a
Probably
3
time and a half.
So that's why the increase. But
Oh,
again,
so it's always
that's-
holiday then, it's never anything other special time that you would wanna have that.
No, we just felt that, again, if we can accommodate the resident, but how do we get our staff to come in? And obviously, there's
Do you
a,
think people would pay this $200?
I personally, I think 200's a little high, but I
It seems a little high just looking at it,
Careful
just
here.
about, you know, so, oh, I know, you might have a.
well, no, just,
It just
full
seems a
disclosure,
little-
I
it just
I
seems-
asked a few years ago, just to, I'd like to rent it on
It's
this
not-
day, and Jim Coglin said, oh, we don't rent it on Christmas Eve, and then he came back to me and he said, you know, I actually have a staff member who'd be willing to work, we could
Could
rent
we
it
do
to
it
you.
for-
And we've been
It
doing
just
it
seems like
since, and
Oh, yeah.
So basically,
about
it's $600 for that room
$30
for 3 hours, basically.
it's been very popular.
Right.
But
And
see, it's
everybody
$600 for that room, $600 for that room, basically, and that fire pit that you're talking
Right.
about. That seems like a lot, a little bit, to me.
okay, we could
I'm just-
absolutely, it was.
I mean, I mean, 150, even, I mean, $100 kind of accommodated that whole, like, having the extra cleaning and everything, so you don't really have to clean the room extra, you just have to pay the staff, right? You know, because off-season, they do that extra cleaning that they.
Yeah, I mean, we absolutely have to cover, you know,
Our
cover the
costs,
costs,
but
make
you,
sure we get
you
paid
look
for
at
it
it, but I
and a
just
half.
thought 200 just sounds like,
Mhm.
you know, like,
What's the nature center if you wanna rent that space? Do we know comparably what other public
I don't
spaces are?
know.
No, I know.
No, I don't know.
It used to be 1,000, but I haven't heard in a couple of days.
but our room
The
is small.
DCA and Nature Center were both 1,000
Yeah.
like 3-4 years
Yeah,
ago.
but we have a small, I mean, this is a small room.
Small room
Space.
with the 5 courts.
With the
and
five, yeah, but,
Yeah, but it's also, yeah, it's a
But-
whole activity, it's not just a party space, it's a whole.
So can we say 175 over the 150? It's a holiday, we're trying to bring in I mean, we should be a little different than the regular time.
I mean, that's, you know, puts it in the, it's just, yeah, I think that's more reasonable. I mean,
Do you think
than-
that's reasonable?
I'm trying to remember, was the court, I think the court fee was on top of it.
At one point it used to be, I remember, you're right. But you know what it used to be? It used to be that you rented all the courts and you got the room. You
Well,
know,
right,
Remember that?
that's-
Like,
I
that was
think
the
that-
default, because
See,
nobody else
I
would come
think
on
that was
to
the room,
courts.
and then I think there was a cost per.
So then
You
you
have
don't really
all
charge
courts,
$50 an hour.
that comes with it,
Okay,
for sure.
but if you
Yes.
have some of the courts, I think there was also a per court fee.
Cause I remember that.
Issues
That's-
they were
I know
having,
that's
that people
still
would try to book
the
3
case.
So you're
courts
gonna
for
charge
2
people
hours
$50
and
an
a
hour
half for
now
2 hours.
still,
So
or
we would have someone
No,
there
not
for 4 hours on a holiday and only charge a few hundred.
I don't know.
So,
I just
I have a question, why not, Pam, why not we just let Pam figure out an amount, a fee, and you'll test the community and see what works, I mean,
It's
if
just
you
that we have to have the park,
We
the
have to have a
schedule.
published fee schedule.
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm saying, I mean, put it out at 200, I mean,
yeah, why lock it in? So, or what I could do is go back to the office and we can look at that and keep it under 200, look at the reasons why, and I can come back here again and tell you it's 5 courts.
Do we have to have it done by a certain meeting, the way the fees work? I can't remember, I thought we had to do it.
I mean, you're talking about a specific set of holidays, and in advance, I'm guessing, you know, if you're gonna make a commitment to somebody coming out and using the facility on a holiday, you have to know that you've got staff also, right? What you don't wanna
It's
do
not a
is,
guarantee.
well, what, I think what you, right, but I think what you probably don't wanna get into a situation on is kind of have somebody plan an event at the paddle hut on a particular holiday, and then only to find out a week before that
Yeah.
there's no staff available, right? That's,
Well, no, that would be booked in advance, and we would make sure we
That's
would
what-
only commit if we had the staff.
right.
But yes, could something happen to a staff member getting sick, and that could, I mean, I'm not gonna tell you it couldn't, but, certainly what we're saying is that it was off the table in the past, and we don't want it to be off the table. We feel that if we can accommodate a resident, we'll accommodate the resident.
There were other people playing down there on Christmas Eve as well.
I think if there's question, I need to straighten out with Jen and figure out exactly what, and I'll come back with it. How's that?
Yeah, because when you used to rent that room, I mean, if you're renting that space, you got everything. That was the whole kit and caboodle.
If you did 5 courts, you got, the hut was included, I'm
Yeah.
certain on that. And then off-season, you can rent it for parties.
And for the higher amount,
And
because
that's
you're not always
$100,
there.
right,
yeah.
that was $100 an hour just for the birthday, like a party.
But you're saying that if someone
Off-season.
wanted to rent it and not use the courts too, that's another option,
Only in the off-season.
but not during the on-season.
No,
because
we
the
wouldn't
whole
rent
idea
just
is that
the
if
room
you're
on
renting,
season, we wouldn't rent the room.
Right, because it's paddle season, or only paddle parties.
and that's the whole
that's
idea
it.
is that that building was built for paddle. For the,
Right,
you know,
for the
a lot,
on-season,
on-season, yeah.
exactly.
But
So-
yeah, if you could clarify
We'll
that.
clarify.
And just like the amount, just if we could see if we could keep it a little more
Reasonable,
reasonable,
sure.
if possible.
I think there should be a difference for
Right.
the,
I agree.
It's just that the room
difference,
itself is,
but not overkill.
but the room is not a big room. That's my only concern is that we're asking a lot for not a large space.
Right,
So
right.
That's the only reason.
And
I'm
this one,
and
the
the fact that you have to do
holiday
it for 3 hours, no matter what. So you're
and
like,
Christmas and New Year's is actually in season, right? So it is in season, but again, it was just off the table before.
But do you have to be
know?
doing paddle to rent it for that holiday amount in season?
Good question.
I don't want to. I'm not
just-
trying to. But we used
Oh,
to.
yeah, just
But that
another
used to
question, I'm not
be.
sure.
That used to be. We were told.
You
that-
guys played paddle.
Yeah, they happen to. But I'm just saying, if someone
My
said,
husband does.
Right, he played paddle, right.
but in theory, like,
No, it
if
was a
someone's
paddle
willing
party.
to pay you
It was-
$200
It was a
an
paddle
hour,
party.
would you for 3 hours? Would you take it and say, oh, well, you know, we got the money in?
And honestly, most people were outside playing paddle most
They
of the
were.
time.
Right.
Came in, grabbed something to eat, and was
Exactly.
out again, so.
I will come back with clarity, how's that?
Yeah, just out of curiosity,
Yeah.
because we had certain things. We had a whole 2-pager written on this at one point. I remember thinking,
Right.
Yeah.
So everything else
Yeah,
we
we've
left
done
the
New Year's-
same.
I mean, I've attended, not organized, but attended New Year's Eve parties down there. Last year we did, this year
Right.
we're gonna do it in the Port Bucket, so
Right.
we didn't. But again, last year there was a big, big group down there. It was
I talked to a friend who rents it, I
40,
can't remember who
which
it
is
was now,
great.
but they said that they were so excited and like all their friends they invited turned up. So yeah, it was a bit on Christmas Eve. Yeah, it's just interesting to hear that.
It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I mean, if we can accommodate it, and I think I'm all for it. So let's just straighten it out. It's new, so there's obviously some questions and.
Well, worked
We'll
nicely,
straighten
I
it
think, because people are home, and that's,
Yeah.
it was
Right.
just, it was, 20-somethings, were home, and it was a father-son-thing, and 20-somethings, and everybody got to see each other, and it was very nice.
My only point here is, on an operational basis, I think you'd probably want to just assure that if someone's scheduling it, you've got some backup for whoever your attendant is.
And we
So
don't
you
have
don't-
a lot, we don't have a lot of
Yeah,
backup.
so just
That's
take
just
that
the
into
chance
consideration.
that
Whatever
we take.
whatever the fee is, I think,
Mhm.
because the fee becomes almost like irrelevant, irrespective of somebody planning an event with 30 people and finding out a week before that they have to cancel.
It's pretty, it hasn't happened.
No, I'm
But
just saying
it could.
No, but I think you're telegraphing to us that, it's kind of an extraordinary circumstance to get somebody to come out on a holiday, which I think I certainly understand that, right?
And we
So-
would know that in advance. We would be able to tell.
I guess I'm just
the party.
suggesting, plan for backup as well.
So what did we decide here?
she's going to come back to us. with
Okay,
that.
okay, but we're good, we don't have to have this published in the brochure or anything before our next meeting?
No, but I do want to just add another, because we talked about the kayak fees, but the other one was, I wanted you to take a look at is the large nonprofit / profit, director discretion. But if you go to the far right, when you go to 2018-19, we had 200 plus and 1,000 to 1,500.
Right.
I really believe that we should have that, and I put 1,000 plus, because with Highland, we'll have 8
That's true.
special events available. And it could be that someone comes out and has, 1,000 people, and we need to be able to charge the right amount, and it
That's a good
won't
call.
be 1,500. If people are gonna be throwing an enormous event and we approve it, so we need to be able to have that discretion to go above and beyond.
That's true. That's a big space now.
So what does it mean, it says 200 plus, and then it says 1,000 plus, what's the 200?
It should be 200 to 1,000 plus.
No.
I
thought that
The
was
reason
the
200
number.
is because how many people show up.
Oh,
That was the number of
right.
people.
Right, sorry.
Because like we used to, that was designed because of the beaches, when we used to
I
have events, like,
understand.
you know how they have the church at the beach
Right.
thing?
Okay, got
So
it,
we looked at those numbers
Right.
and
okay.
I mean,
Sorry.
200 plus is an enormous,
Okay.
It's a big number of
Okay.
people, yes.
it's a big number of people, but we can get there could be a lot more people on a 16-acre parcel.
Yeah, I agree. I think to
So-
give you, that wasn't designed for Highland, it was designed for the beach, which had constrictions. to,
Right.
like,
But even Weed Beach Fest is bringing in
I mean,
a lot more people than 200. So I think
we actually
it just
never-
leaves us in a better position.
I think it was designed mostly for picnics, not necessarily like, oh, here's the whole beach, it's yours.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying? So
Right.
I think you're right, now that you've changed the way you do events, you should have that flexibility.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. And lastly, that's not on here, that was talked about in the budget meeting with the town administrator, town selectman, finance director, was when we are looking at fees for, do we charge sports groups a fee to use the fields? And we do not. And,
The Board of Ed does, you know that.
right, they charge at least 25 per
It's per head,
head.
and
And I don't-
it's per season, so like if you're doing a couple of seasons, so that was the thing that we used to talk about in our meetings, is that we never charged it, but we felt like we were already charged, you know what I mean? But then the Board of Ed gets paid by us too, so it's kind of.
But there is, I think the consensus is that there is a lot of maintenance on our fields.
What?
A lot of maintenance.
Oh, yeah,
Maintenance. I mean, there's a lot of maintenance, there's a lot of work behind it, and perhaps we're at the stage where we should be getting something back from the fields.
But
Now,
some of those groups have been, supporting and helping us with the fields, like.
they do,
things
like Little League has
and
given
stuff.
some, exactly,
So
soccer
it's
has
not-
given things.
It's not
and-
one-sided entirely,
No.
that's why.
No, but the donations are wonderful. I don't anticipate that those donations would go away, but they are not annually, and our maintenance is annual. So, and I think we should be, I think maybe $5 a head is probably sufficient. And I had talked to youth soccer about this because of Highland coming online, with the possibility of them playing there, and they were.
They just pass it on to.
They were fine.
families anyway.
They were fine with it. They
So
understand
Little League,
any sports groups that utilize our fields, no, we don't
That
charge
charge
anything.
residents, not high school teams then. So like any groups that are not high school teams, basically. Because like, like
Right.
soccer, you talk about the tennis team at the high school, you're not gonna charge, they don't get
No.
charged already.
No.
Whereas you're talking
We're
about
talking about youth leagues.
youth leagues, like
Leagues.
soccer,
Mhm.
whatever, not, I
Mhm.
don't know, lacrosse plays soccer fields, but anyway.
I think that's legitimate. I think
Yeah.
you've got a legitimate reason.
Yeah, and I don't think we should do 25. I think it should be, I think personally, $5 a participant, and it just helps with the
To
maintenance of our
further
fields.
So they would pay, so like a town resident would say, I'm paying $250 for soccer and 5 of them, they would feed you whatever, the $5 off each person that registered for you.
The organization would
Yeah.
write a check
Yeah,
to the town.
Like a rental fee, almost,
Mhm.
paid per head,
Right.
per usage.
Yeah, and we're gonna have we'll end up having a meeting hopefully this year with all the heads of each organization. And I don't think it's an unusual fee. I don't think it's outlandish.
so does that need to be added to this schedule, or do you see that as something separate?
How does that accounting work? Do they, excuse me, I'm interrupting. How does that accounting work? Because do they show you how many participants are in the program? Or they just say we had 30 people here?
Yeah, we'll have to look
It's
that
all
out with the league.
computerized anyway.
We'll have to work that out.
I don't think it
Well,
needs to
it's
be in
not.
this.
Every year is
for
different.
the- Yeah, it's not done, since we're not actually selling the
No, I mean,
participation fees, you have to rely on the
They'll
league to
report.
tell you how
Right.
how
They
many.
have rosters.
yeah, we have to
They'll have to
register.
submit a roster, and
Makes
I-
sense.
I don't think it should be on the fee schedule though, because it's a
I
different type of,
agree.
because it's a, you're talking
And
about
it's gonna
what the
change every
consumer
year.
comes in and asks for, like your town residents versus what you're charging, like a large outsource, you don't
Yeah.
need to put this on that. And that's to be determined anyway, so,
I think so too.
but it's a good question.
And that is all.
So overall, you really haven't changed any fees except the addition of the minutes.
Exactly.
And I guess that just means that you feel comfortable for 4 years not raising any fees.
I do, unless, the commission certainly can have their suggestions about raising fees. We've raised fees once since I've been here. That was with the beach stickers.
Yeah.
And
Lots of discussion.
we've made a few few changes, but we had, not in the last, as I moved this schedule in the last 3 years, we haven't made many changes at all.
So do you get pushback on these fees?
No.
So if we don't get pushback, maybe we should consider raising some?
Or do you mean pushback from residents, or do you mean pushback from town administration that we should be charging more?
Residents?
No,
I'm sure the town would love it if we charged.
I'm certain there are people that come in and get their beach sticker.
Yeah, like, that's what I'm
But at the
asking
same
for.
time,
People are like, oh,
I don't
it's
hear
like-
any crazy, pushback on it. I think, quite honestly, we're bringing in over $300,000 a year. I think it's great. Maybe when we talk about, when we get close to the construction of Pear Tree, maybe that's the
That was
time
in a short
where we
line.
That's
say,
when we did it.
we
in a
raise
short
it $5 to help with offset the costs of construction.
We did that with Reed Beach, we waited though until we were done.
Right, I think,
And then we did it, and
I
then
don't
we
think there's
didn't
any
want to do too much
reason
more.
right now to do it, but that would be a good reason.
When you're offering brand new, more amenities, let's say, like, then it makes sense,
Yeah.
but not to do it when you're kind of
I
steady
think the
state.
fees are,
You're
fine.
fine.
Good.
So we will not vote on these now, we'll take that
in February.
and
Okay.
and finalize how we wanna handle the, holiday rentals. Okey-dokey. Update on the budget, you touched on it, you had your meeting with, Jamie and Kate Bush.
Can I go back 1 second? Because you talked to me,
Yep.
because you talked about the fact that our brochure's coming out, the kayak would be in there. So as long as we could make everything, if we could vote on everything besides that, that'd be helpful, because we want to put everything in our brochure, which we have to go.
Besides that being
Right.
the
Everything but the
paddle
holiday
holiday, which is,
isn't till
That's the-
yeah,
later.
that's till next season.
Yeah,
Well, that's fine.
yeah, I think
Good
that would
call.
be great.
We can vote on that.
That's what I was concerned about, is you guys got
Exactly.
both printed and you couldn't wait another
We have
month.
to go,
Okay, well then we will take, if I can have a motion to approve the 2019-2020 park fee schedule as proposed by Pam, with the exception of how we will handle, rental of the paddle hat during, key holidays. Susan?
I'll make the motion.
Right.
I'll make the motion.
Mary Louise? Okay, all those in favor? Great, any opposed? So on to the budget, you can update on your, on the
Yes.
meeting you had with.
Right, so the meeting went well with the budget, and that doesn't mean there won't be cuts made, but there were no cuts made that morning. But we had good discussion. One detail of the short lane construction is, obviously I had to go ahead and try to sell that to town administrator and town selectman, finance director, because Board of Selectmen hasn't really even been shown the design yet either. I explained that it was a little coming down the pipeline pretty quick, but it was important to us that we felt the design was a good one, the commission approved it. It would be great to be able to get this in the cycle before some of the other big capital improvement plans come down the pipeline. And even though all our numbers from the original proposal from Weston Sampson was higher than what we were proposing, we are looking to get Dan to cut those down. But what was great was that I said, well, we can do without some of the asphalt parking, and I think the consensus was, hey, look, will that parking lot enhance the design? Yes. Then the feeling was, keep that number in there then. And not look at phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. But I do confidently feel that the number can be reduced. So with that 500, we then asked for the 623, because the asphalt parking was $122,000. So with that, Kate then has to take it and try to sell it in her budget now to the Board of Finance and the selectmen. So, but the feeling was that the design was great. It looked great, as Laura and I were discussing yesterday, and it's time. We've had the property for a long time. We've discussed it for many years. We've made some improvements. outside of any designs. We just went ahead and found some money and we had it cleared out and it's starting to look like something. So I think the argument is there that we should do something with it, but there are steps to go. So it was a very positive meeting, and I will update you further when I hear if any other cuts have been made.
So the next step is that the town administrator will submit the budget to the selectmen.
Yes.
And they will have their round of meetings, and we'll know when, at what meeting our budget's being discussed.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's not been scheduled
I'm
yet.
forgetting, I think it has actually, but it's at the end of this month, and I will forward you all that information.
And the Board of Finance also looks at it.
After it goes through the selectmen's round and they make any adjustments that they would like to make, then a new budget, then the selectmen budget then gets
To
sent
the
to
Board
the
of
Board of
Finance.
Finance.
Bless you.
And then they go through a month's or so worth of review and analysis department by department.
And budgets are typically finalized when?
Late April, late May.
I'm just gonna see if we can find that date later, if that was put in there. But other than that, it all went well, and I'll
And the
let you know
support
what
for
they-
the, you appear to have support for the additional FTE that you were looking for,
to the what?
additional employee.
Right, yes, yes, they're trying to be very transparent about that, and, you know, why we need the position. The argument is there as well, because there's, you know, Highland property is going to be under our control, it's 16.2 acres. Short Lane is looking to have that project go through, which would increase the size of that facility, and it would need a lot of grooming and attention, so, you know, we need to get our crew back up to our regular status. We are down a man, and we had 6, we have 5 full-time people right now, and we're hoping that they'll take that seriously and, you know, take a look at the big picture. But I can't answer any more than that, so it's out of my hands at this point.
Since Highland Farm is not dedicated parkland,
Mhm.
we were not to get that position. Could you go back and say the Parks and Rec Department does not have the capacity to
Handle this.
handle it and lob it over to
Public Works?
Public Works?
Clever.
Just saying.
Why not?
Yeah, it's a sticky situation, but, you know, because we will be managing it, we will be scheduling it, and there's really no, you know,
Doesn't mean you have to know it.
I like to pick
I'm just
my
I'm
battles.
just saying, I
You
mean,
have a mowing shutdown.
no, but it's not, it is not a dedicated parkland, it's not our property.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good point.
So we're being asked to maintain it, we need to be
Yeah.
given the resources.
Yeah.
Do it on
It's a good argument for your person.
Yes. But I think the argument so far is understood. It's understood. So I think if we need to go there, we will, you know, we will push to make sure that we give, and we are saying, look, that the residents they look for a certain standard that we've been giving them over the years. And we don't want it any less than what we want to keep giving them good service and good maintenance, and I think that they fully understand and support that. So, no, feeling confident about that. I did sit, the Board of Selectmen budget meeting is scheduled for January 30th at 5:30.
Okay, so that's good timing.
So again, Kate Bush, who town administrator, she has kind of changed the budgeting process. It used to be a lot different. She's now, when all the department heads meet with her and Jamie and the finance director, and we sell our budget to her, that becomes her budget. It's no longer our budget. So even as meetings, like I'm going to this meeting, but it's I'm there in case I need to back something up. But quite honestly, it's her floor, it's her budget, she's taking it, and she's going to present it to the Board of Selectmen.
Is that on that topic?
Good.
Okay, next up on the agenda, Mike will give an update on the pear tree improvement.
Yes. So the committee met this evening. Our prior meeting was December 12th. And a lot of activity since last we spoke. So, and principally activity along 2 two tracks. So that kind of the more substantive one is the selection of the design architect. We, as everybody was aware, we had an RFP out to the marketplace. The close date for the bidding process was January 7th, and we received 5 bids from design architect firms. I think we may have gone out, well, it was publicly posted, but in addition to that, I think we may have reached out to 18 or so specific firms. So we received bids from 5 firms, of which, and we had also kind of communicated a budgetary number to the marketplace as well of $150,000 for the design architect services. 3 of the bids came in within that range, 2 came in over that as well. So essentially, we have 3 bidders that we're reviewing all of those, but in essence, two of those bidders essentially disqualified themselves by coming in above the number. And as I mentioned, we're still reviewing those just to see what we can learn from those, and maybe we'll make some determination to do something in terms of some additional conversation with them. But the core activity centers around the three firms, as I mentioned, that came in within bids. Those 5 bidders are Landtech out of Westport, Neil Hauk, who I understand many of us know here, out of Darien, a firm called Schmidt Design Group out of Orange, Connecticut, Stantec out of New Haven, and a firm called QA&M out of Farmington. It's a little bit of a mixed bag in terms of the specific focus, core focus of each of these. Some of these are engineering firms. So Landtech, as an example, is, I think, from what you can gather from the RFP response, it's primarily an engineering firm. Some are primarily architectural firms. In every case, they're bidding with partners as well. So, in those cases where the lead is an architectural firm, they're bidding with an engineering firm as well as, other supporting firms, planning firms as an example. Neil Hauk, in fact, is bidding along with Weston and Sampson. As you mentioned, we're going through the review process now. In terms of the timeline, the timeline on the architectural review process kind of unfolds as following. The committee has a meeting on the 23rd. That meeting is intended for us to just really essentially kind of reflect on the review to date, and then also give some consideration for how we want to go through the interview process and kind of finalize the interview process with a selection and voting. So that's really essentially a workshop for us to just make sure we're all on the same page. And I'll come back around to what the selection team looks like in a second, but just from a timing perspective, there's the meeting on the 23rd, and then we'll, ideally on the 23rd, in fact, initially on the meeting of the 23rd was kind of also targeted to identify top 3 bidders. As I mentioned, we've got 5, and 2 have essentially disqualified themselves, so kind of the top 3 becomes self-evident, but we still have to go through that process. We feel we'll still go through that process. So that's the meeting on the 23rd, workshopping for us to just prepare for the next meeting. The next meeting is a series of interviews that will take place on the 31st. So of those top 3, we'll invite them in, we'll go through interviews with the selection team, and then we have, and this will come out of what we do on the 23rd, we'll have some decisioning that will have to take place around, what will happen after those folks leave and we're on our own, and we'll have to go through a little bit of a discussion process and the deliberation process amongst the selection team, and then ultimately we'll have to vote. What we've done is we've also left ourselves a follow-on meeting on the 6th. So as you can see, kind of a number of back-to-back meetings during this process, during this period. And the backup meeting on the 6th would be, in the event, for some reason or another, we couldn't get all the interviews in on the 31st. And then also separately, if we feel at the end of the day that we'll need more time to contemplate kind of the discussions that we had, and then we also may have the circumstance where we may not have a quorum on the 31st for the committee to actually vote. So once again, the backup on the 6th would be, in the event we need a bit more time, or for some reason we didn't have a quorum on the 31st, we'll get together on the 6th. So that's the timeline on the architectural selection process. What we've also done is kind of establish what we've called the extended selection team. The selection team is made up of the committee. There are 5 of us on the committee who are voting members, so it's that core set of 5 that will actually vote at the end of the day. What we wanted to do is also take advantage of the subject matter experts within the town organization as well. So I'll read through the names of the folks that are on the kind of extended team as well. So in addition to the committee, Lori, of course, as chair of the Parks and Recs Commission, is on the selection team. Jim Coughlin and Jim Flynn. So Jim Coughlin, Assistant Director of Parks and Recs. Jim Flynn, Supervisor of Darien Parks Maintenance. Ed Gentile as well, Director of Public Works. Pam, of course, and then Jeremy Ginsberg, the Director of Planning and Zoning. So a little bit of a kind of a large group, but once again, our goal is to take advantage of deep expertise amongst the folks who have actually done this before and really kind of live it every single day. So that's the design architect process. The goal would be to have, at the end of the day, come to a decision by the end of January, early February. And then what we have to do is come back to, the committee is to come back to the commission. So we're going to come back, our plan would be to come back with a recommendation to the commission and then ask the commission to vote on the committee's recommendation. At the moment, I think the commission's next meeting date after this date is the end of February, February 27th, I think, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, one thing we've got a little bit of a dilemma here, scheduling dilemma is, we don't want to get into, ideally we'd like to not be in a situation where we go through our process, settle on an architectural firm, and then have to kind of tell them to cool their heels for a month while, waiting for our next meeting before we can get a vote to go forward. So I'll just leave that at the moment out there, and I know we'll have to have some discussion around whether or not there's an opportunity to get an earlier meeting.
Yeah,
Special meeting.
I think there's a good
Specifically for that
chance
vote.
we will need to call a special meeting sometime in February, just for the specific purpose of that.
There's a break in February.
Just that
Right.
week, the
Misunderstood.
18th, so,
Yep.
We were thinking February 6th.
that's why we moved
So I
it.
mean, it doesn't have to be a Wednesday night, I mean, we just find what,
We moved, because that meeting was moved. That's why it's so weird, late.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, if we could do something, thereabouts February 6th, I mean, like on the 6th or, thereabouts, that would be great.
Got it.
So that's that process. The other track that's taking place, which kind of ultimately converges with this, is the selection of a surveying firm, a land surveying firm. Became very clear early on that we needed to, we don't have current survey of the Pear Tree Beach, Point Beach
As a whole.
as a whole property. There was, separate from an RFP, there was an invitation to bid that was sent out in December. The response date on that was January 10th. I believe, Pam, you can keep me honestly, I think we got 8 bids back. And then Pam has been going through an exercise with the bidder, who turns out to be the low bidder. And maybe I'll just ask Pam if you could just kind of fill us in there, and then I'll circle back around and just explain what the committee did this evening.
Okay, so we had 8, and they varied all over in terms of cost. So the lowest bidder was $5,350, which was Ed Frateroli. And we had Redis and Mead, who we worked with in the past. They had $14,800. We had Control Point at $13,300. We had Walter Skid at $6,250. We had William and Seymour at $12,380. We had Moody and O'Brien at $10,500. We had DeMarzo and Boruski at $9,400, and J. Edwards Association at $23,575. So they were, the range was broad. Obviously, I talked to Ed Gentile and Jeremy Ginsberg, and Ed has personally worked with Ed Frateroli, as well as many other firms. And but yes, he has used this company, been very happy with them. They tend to be a bit lower. We've also used, Redis and Mead, and been happy with them as well. But at this point, it was hard not to take a look at this 5,000 versus 15,000. And so I went back to this particular group and confirmed that this low bid had everything in RFP that we were looking for. And indeed it did. He confirmed that. and as well as the additional cost to have a soil scientist that would be delineating wetlands on the property. And I did ask this particular guy that works for Fred Frederoli company is named Bob, and he came to meet me in my office, and we went over the specs of the RFP, and he had his notes, and he had everything all aligned, and he wanted the work. And so I called references, and his references were great. And he had Darien Country Club as one of them, and they gave him a great reference. He's worked with this company and Bob many times, and would call him again. There's Stanford Harbor also is in the midst of working with the company and Bob, and so far the job is going great. They're happy with them. Of course, they haven't finished the entire project yet, but so I went to the committee and
Earlier this
Recommended.
evening, right, so Pam made her recommendation to move forward with these guys, and early this evening we voted to authorize Pam to proceed with that, so it's a great story because obviously it's the low bidder and it's great.
it gives us more freedom with the money that we have too. And, so we have other big jobs of RFPs coming down the pipeline, at Woodland Park, and, so, it's great. Do a real good job, and get like that too.
And that work is targeted to be complete by March 1, correct?
Yes.
End of February, to line up with the selection of the architects. When the architect gets rolling, they'll have
Or property line.
a
How
common
long
set of.
has he been in business, this company?
40 years.
Wow.
40 years, and then there's family now.
That's involved, that's why it's kind of.
That's why they kept the name.
It's an amazing bid, because I can tell you that a regular residential survey going rate is $3,000, just to do a home, so that's good.
Okay, so the only other item that I have is, like a week or so ago, the Board of Selectmen voted to approve the nomination of an alternate for the Pear Tree Beach Building Committee, and the purpose of that is to assure that we've got a quorum as we go forward in the event folks are not available, committee members are not available to attend meetings. And they named Adele Coniff, who, of course, all of us know, but Adele is the chair of the RTM Parks and Recs Committee. So Adele was not able to join us this evening, but we've all welcomed her through email, and we're looking forward to having her participate along with us. And so that's it. Lots of stuff going on. I think we're in a period now where it's a critical period for us because we've got to make the selection has to be a good one. But I think once we get past this selection process and get somebody on board, I'm anticipating things will start to move forward at a much faster pace as well. So.
Can I just ask one question, if that's okay? It's probably more of a Board of Selectmen question, since they picked it, but if someone is gone for several months during this, you just named like January, all these deadlines, I'm wondering why that person is on your committee.
Yeah, to your point, it's probably better.
It's a selectman.
Well, but I'll do my best to
Okay.
answer. So I think what the selectmen kind of acknowledged here and recognized is that, and I think the phenomena, let's say, of building committees is something that I think is kind of, obviously, I think the community's seeing merit in. So there'll be more. And I think with that, there's a possibility that whether someone's gone for a few months or something happens, or someone's out for a week or so, I think there needs, and once you get to the design phase where decisions have to be made quickly, once you get to the building phase where decisions need to be made very, very quickly potentially, otherwise you're holding things up. I think there's a recognition based upon prior experience that there has to be a quorum available. And so I don't know if it's a question, I don't believe it's a question as to, why, respectfully, why that person was on to begin with. I mean, people come, people go, people take vacations.
I have no problem with an alternate. I think that's a good idea. I
think that's the
It
basis for it.
wasn't planned.
Okay.
It
Well-
was a surprise, and they decided that they were going to go away.
But these building, sorry to cut you off, but these building committees, as I'm learning, go on for years.
Yeah.
This committee will go on for years. That's the reality of it. So,
That's what, no,
I'm
I
probably
just,
going to need an
I
alternate
was
to
impressed with
step
how
in for
much
me
you've
fairly
done in
soon.
such a short period of time, so great job.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. Thank you very much. I hope that helps the explanation.
I just wanted to mention, as you're looking at dates, February 6th is an important meeting. The town has a meeting on bags. The plastic bag commission is going to be meeting to ban, it's called the ban bag ordinance. So, I think we should all consider attending that meeting, because
What's
it's an
the,
important
what's the
meeting.
time on that meeting?
It's at 8 o'clock.
Right, so
Yeah.
it's potential, but we could still have a 6 o'clock meeting.
And then go to that
6
one
or
on
7:30.
I mean, if we called the meeting, it would literally be for one item,
Yeah.
right? It would literally be for one item, but you probably would leave
And that meeting's in town hall.
45 minutes.
let's
I mean, we can
see.
talk about it as we
It's
get
a
closer to
public
the
hearing,
meeting, but-
8 p.m. During town hall.
Yeah,
Just
so
go
that
for
makes
that.
it easy then as well.
Yeah.
Should be in the right place.
Okay, that's it for me.
Thank you for that update.
Thanks.
On the Short Lane project, Pam has been continuing to work with Weston and Sampson to,
There's notes here.
you got notes?
Yeah,
Notes, we'll go over
no, so I
progress on that.
asked Dan just to give me feedback as to where he's at. And he said basically we're working through the preliminary design and permitting package now and plan to have this complete for a January 30th submission to Richard and the EPC. If accepted, we will be on February 6th or March 6th meeting agenda. We plan on making any requested changes of the EPC and preparing the final design package for the end of March or early April. At one of the meetings, well, you noted that the Water and Sewer Commission need to meet to discuss, and I have to get him the Water and Sewer Commission meeting schedule, because that's key to the project, because the land that is in between the sewer company and the short lane that was bought for the town, that we have now, is all brush. That part of it needs to get acceptance from them that say they're happy to improve, beautify that section. And so that's part of the process there. But that's that in a
And
nutshell.
we were talking about having a public hearing.
Oh, yes,
The
thank you.
February meeting.
Yes.
Part of our February
So there's a
meeting,
lot going on, correct, and
to present the
Got it.
plans,
Yeah.
even though at that point we wouldn't necessarily have all of the approvals.
right, but it would be important that the design that the commission has approved moving forward, that we have a public hearing for those in the neighborhood to see. So that, to us, in our office, we'd have to plan for that at least 2 weeks in advance to get letters out to the neighbors and make sure we're prepared for that.
We were planning to do that as part of the
February 27th.
February 27th meeting, so we could just, do we have to make it ahead at 7, or can we just have it the first agenda item of our 7:30 meeting?
I believe we could do it at 7:30.
7:30.
You think?
You're
Given
gonna
what
open that
happened
up
before?
all the way to near water
We're
lane,
planting grass
as far
and
as
making a
trees,
walking
brush,
path.
whatever.
There's trees along there that cover it, if you remember the
Okay,
design.
Right,
Right,
so you're gonna leave some of them.
yeah, or we'll plant new.
Okay,
We would most definitely make sure there's a shield,
okay,
absolutely, that's without saying.
okay.
So even in their preliminary design, they have that where, plus they have it in their breakdown of the costs is trees.
Okay.
So we will make sure that's an absolute, and I'm certain we will hear that from the neighbors as well. The sewer commission, the sewer plant that's there now has planted trees as well there on that corner
Okay.
that are still blooming, but the cross street neighbors had asked for that and they did plant trees there. So that's really not a problem.
And our hopes is that we can get the money through and into the 2019 fiscal budget so that the work can be done probably in the fall. So the property, the town staff has done work on it and made it, usable now, but it won't be in what we envision as more the final form until summer 2020.
Right, if we can get the work done, if everything is passed and construction goes, we can plan that for at least maybe November and December of 2019 for being able to be used spring of 2020.
So we're still a ways off.
Yeah, very close.
It's my mission.
I know.
Yeah.
How many years
Okay.
later?
I know, but we're close.
All right, Pam is gonna give her director's report.
Yeah, so we've been really busy with all these RFPs but we've accomplished a lot. And Lori's picture's upside down. Do you see yourself on the back?
No?
Oh, you didn't, huh? Then read the report. So if you flip, you'll see your little face there with your granddaughter. So
No, I read the front, I didn't.
we've completed the paddock fence at Highland.
Looks good.
Doesn't it look
It does
nice?
look-
It looks
it does
very
look
good.
really
Great.
nice.
Looks like it's always been there.
Yeah. The two gates on either end. Our park crew did a great job by marking out the bar parking lot and with posts and rope and fencing on each end. We have installed the LED lights at the paddle hut, which have made an enormous difference, and we've already been getting a lot of thank yous for it as well, so.
Any neighbor calls, no problems with the lights?
No, no, I mean, we had lights there before.
Sure.
This is just an upgrade.
Just
approval.
brighter.
Yeah, no, I think there's, if we do, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Because it's possible, but so far people are just very appreciative and, you know, I will reiterate that we had $25,000 that the commission had put into the capital improvement project and we only used $2,000 of that. So
Wow.
we saved, you know, $23,000 on that project and that's with installation and product. So, because we got a Bright Lights Energy grant to take care of that, so we're proud of that. Saving the town some money is always a good thing.
Great.
And we also, let's see what else we already talked about all the RFPs that went through. Oh, we launched our commemorative bench program as of yesterday. So I've been working on that for a really long time. And we have chosen 4 different style benches. We have a teak bench that we will put throughout different parks, which is a gorgeous bench. Greenwich uses it for their bench program, and we'd like to keep it natural. The message here is that if you want to honor a loved one or somebody just special in the community that you think deserves to have it, you can purchase this bench through us. And I'll mention teak. We have it's kind of a polyhex bench that's already at Wheat Beach, but we'll keep that same look, which is the white benches throughout the facility in Wheat Beach. And then we have a buddy bench that we want to do at playgrounds. And then we want to stick with the theme of the athletic benches that we have going on now that honor a father in town already there, but it's the same look and you can have engravings right within the wood there. But we'll keep it simple. We'll give residents 3 different choices of their location. They are not guaranteed to get the locations of their choice. Ultimately, it's up to the Park and Rec as to where the benches really need to go in the parks.
What are the different prices on the benches?
They're $2,500. They will stay in town 10 years. We'll maintain them. And then there's the athletic benches were $2,000, but all of $2,000 for the buddy bench as well, the playground. So the more high area parks like the beaches were $2,500. So we're happy. We've braced ourselves. At Home already wants to order 3 of them for their 10-year anniversary, and I think it will be very successful. We have 2 other people that have been at me for over the year to really want to get the loved ones they want to honor as well. So I think it's great because we have a lot of benches throughout town that at some point need to be replaced. And so this is just a great way, and you know, Short Lane doesn't have any benches right now, and there are areas in our parks where we need more. So I'm really excited about it, that the offices have embraced it, and we're ready to rock and roll with it.
And we would do that at Pear Tree once we do whatever
Exactly.
we're gonna do.
The gatehouse, the security gatehouse, Jim Coughlin, the assistant director, and I are going up to Colchester tomorrow to a small buildings vendor who custom makes gatehouses, he makes garages, and they built Norwalk's gatehouse, which I've always really liked. And so it just so happened when I called him,
Pastor?
Yeah. It's kind of big, isn't it?
it's a little bit bigger than what but they can custom make it. And their estimate was fantastic, and so Jim and I are gonna go up there tomorrow, and it takes 4 to 6 weeks to build. It will be a completely new look than what we have out there now, which is kind of that metal,
What's the carefree part of their company mean? I saw that their name is
small,
called.
carefree building.
Yeah, what does it mean? It means like materials are carefree, or,
I don't know.
I just thought that was an interesting name.
Yeah, they've been around for a long time, actually.
That maybe.
And when I contacted them, they said, yeah, we built that in Norwalk. So that was, of course, that was kind of our in. Oh, great, that's been around a while. And so no, we're excited about it because it will give a fresh new look. And also Weed Beach, I took a picture today when I was down there. That gatehouse is not looking good.
No.
And so if this company can, custom make something for well under what we have in the budget, we might be able to get two out of the same, as long as it's in different seasons, I think.
Kim, I apologize, I probably should have brought this to you earlier and maybe even in the committee meeting, but when do we actually start having someone at these? Obviously, it's time with the opening of the beaches, but what's the date?
April is in Weed Beach, and Pear Tree does not need a guard until May.
Is it a
So,
memorial?
can I
End
just-
of May.
Is it worth thinking then, you'll meet with them and you'll find out what the lead time is, but I'm just wondering if with Pear Tree to Chena.
I know what you're gonna say, and we've thought it over and over again, but it is.
I'm not suggesting-
It's dilapidated, so the plan is.
No, listen, let me just
Okay,
finish for a
sorry.
second. We're probably saying the same
Yeah.
thing, but I'm not suggesting delaying past
Okay.
the opening, but I'm just suggesting kind of at least working it in, consulting with the design architect once we choose that person, which should be beginning of February.
Yeah, I think that's.
And
good.
just kind of look, they're not gonna have they're not gonna have a sense, they may have some sense, but they're not gonna have a design the day they start with us.
Right.
But maybe just get a read from them if they feel like, I can't imagine something you're gonna come up with is gonna be dramatically inconsistent with what we're gonna end up with potentially with a new building. But I'm just thinking, we might wanna have something that kind of resonates with a new building, as opposed to something that's very different.
I think that's an excellent point.
I agree, and I don't think the feeling is we wanna wait past the summer, because it is
No, I'm
that
not
bad.
suggesting you do that.
But-
My guess is they probably have like a catalog of what they do. Or at least they're gonna have to show you something, unless they're asking you
Oh,
for a design.
absolutely, no.
So they'll have a catalog, and I'm just suggesting, find out what the lead time
Right.
is on these things. If they say, hey, wait, we need,
It's 4 to 6 weeks.
so if it's April, you've got probably to the beginning of,
A little bit of time.
mid-March probably, beginning of March.
Right.
Actually, maybe even a little later.
Our feeling too was that we wanted to make sure that no matter what we end up with, that it can be moved. So
Fair enough.
because that entrance,
Yeah.
we understand
I'm
that
just thinking,
it could move a little bit, it could.
Yeah, we're gonna end up spending a lot of money potentially on something that's gonna be very, very beautiful for the community. And it'd be terrible, not terrible, it'd be nice if we didn't find ourselves in a situation 2 years from now scratching our heads saying,
Why do we do
gee, that kind of looks a little.
Yeah, missed opportunity. They should relate.
Anyway, sorry that I didn't bring it to you.
No, and it's okay, because we've been thinking about this all along.
No, I know.
But we've been fixing the floor, it's a hazard,
No question about it.
It needs to be done, and it's unfortunate, it's not the best of timing, but I think we keep in mind that it should be neutral to whatever's put up there too.
What are you
Well, it
thinking
sounds
about
like this will work. You guys will
Yeah.
have a decision, and the
Well, I
architect will
think,
say, yeah, we can do this.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
Yeah, I just don't know, the building isn't gonna be designed at that point.
No, but they'll have some sort of
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm
let's say
guessing,
it's
yeah.
Neil, he'll be able to say.
What are you thinking about for the Weed Beach one? You said that's in good shape?
No, I think we can get through a season, but knowing that we have X amount of dollars in the capital improvement plan for this one, we may very well be able to get two.
But
Out
are you
of this,
saying that the
and-
Weed Beach one you think needs to be replaced as opposed to fixed?
I'm certain it could probably be patched up, but it's starting to look pretty bad. It's rusting all at the bottom, and yeah. So
Is it movable?
it's already been moved once. So it was moved from near water further into the property, so it's been moved once. I can't tell you, Susan, you can probably tell me how old it is.
We ran out of money, and that was not to be.
Yeah,
There's-
yeah, where I'm going is, do we take the one at Weed Beach, throw it over to Pear Tree Freer, if it's better, design, get something for Weed that's sympathetic with, we know what that looks like, live along with
It's a good idea.
for Pear Tree for a year or two, and then,
That's why they're paying you the big bucks.
I only,
Excuse
you
me.
guys are right there behind me.
The only thing I'm thinking about though too is the footprint of Weed Beach is larger than the footprint.
Yeah, it's a
now.
lot.
The only thing I'm
That's what I was gonna
concerned
say,
about
it's
is the
significantly larger.
Right, well,
It's
it's
wider,
it's
it's
8
much
by
wider.
10 versus 6 by 8, but doesn't mean that you couldn't, I say this without actually going down there and measuring out, but the thought is you could move it back. There's parking lot there, there's no parking behind the shack that there is now. So it's possible, it's definitely something to think about.
It's just because we know what we've got at Weed Beach. We know the design, so you could definitely say something that's sympathetic with the architecture of
We
the
didn't
paddle
spend money
hut.
on that. We ran out of money, which is part of the reason we just took on a pig and kept on going with it.
Right.
We literally got, the garden club put some plants around it. We didn't really do as much as we could have, because we did run out of money. I mean,
Right.
we had to value engineer so much at the end.
Yeah.
That was the thing. I mean, we moved it.
I think it's a great thought, and I think we should look into it, and I certainly will talk, I think Jim Flynn is number one that I talked to, and Ed, I mean, how viable is moving this to a different location? I don't know.
Maybe you could float it over.
Barge
Barge it over, try to go up and down
That's a
and
great
around.
idea. I love
Barge
it.
it over.
That's really smart. Smart people.
But yeah, good thought, I honestly, that never crossed my mind. So that's good for my, Jamie, might wanna talk about her something sweet, and.
Actually,
Well,
her
so-
a
Tilly.
couple things. Can you give us an update on the dogs?
Oh, yeah.
And also the paddle situation with Tokenie?
We're still in negotiations with that, so I can't really talk much on paddle, other than it's still out there, we're still talking, and, I expect in the next couple months, we'll talk a little bit more about it, but I don't know any details I can talk, other than it's still around. And, the dog, pilot program has been going, fine, I've been down there multiple times, I've walked the beach, I haven't seen any leftovers, if you will. I haven't seen any bags. I went there and fixed the sign. We put up the fence. There was a couple times where our signs were just gone, so we replaced them. We hung complimentary dog bags that are not the park ones that we have, because they're very expensive. So we were clever and just put out a clever way of hanging there saying complimentary of Darien Parks and Recreation. Had a lot of conversations with happy people. The only feedback I've gotten recently is that there are a few people like Jim Coughlin and our paddle attendant that have noticed some dogs and people on the other side near the paddle hut. Now those people were talked to, and they simply said that they were walking through because they live on the other side of Brushy Hill. So that's, again, at least there is proactive. The employees happen to see it, and they go out and talk to the people, let them know that they're not supposed to be over at this side. But other than that, Chip hasn't had any. He's been down there. I've seen him as well.
So do they then tell them they have to reroute to the correct way, or are they allowed to traverse that way?
No, they tell them they're not allowed on this side of the park, that they should go around the other side.
So they need to go around and enter in a different way. Yeah,
So
it's gonna have.
It probably, most likely these people, if they live there, have been doing that trek for a long time.
Right.
And I would imagine. But we can only do so much, and I think, as far as I'm concerned, I've had many conversations with people that have been out on the beach with their dogs, and they're happy, the place is clean, and I don't know if you have any feedback, Patty.
Do you think we should put up a sign that says no dogs?
We have a sign. We have a sign. We don't have it on the other side, but they're not supposed to be over there.
How many dogs have another sign?
I've seen probably, I guess,
Cause that was the
10 to
other
12, 10 to 12.
issue. At a time? Or
No,
in total?
No, there's not.
There's
there
three-
really is
three to
not
four.
a lot of traffic.
No, 3 to 4 dogs.
That's what my
I've
point
seen
is that was
at a
one of
time.
the things we talked about.
About
was,
how many coming down the
You
street.
know, we were
Yeah.
afraid that we
I think the
were
most
It's not
I
a
ever saw
traffic
was
issue,
4.
Yeah.
that's what your concern is,
That's
no,
my
not a
question.
lot.
Yeah.
I was there on New Year's Day, which was a sunny day, you know, it's gonna be really cold this weekend, so I doubt I'll be there. It's 0 degrees. But I met some nice people. I met like 3 or 4 people that I'd never met before, because I'm usually at Cherry Lawn or I go to Waveney, and they were so thankful. Actually, one of them was your person who runs the, at Weed Beach, who runs the water program. She works for Down Under, I guess.
Oh,
Allison?
Kim.
I can't recall her name, but she was there with her dog, and she was.
Kim Beaumont?
Maybe
It
Kim.
was,
Yeah.
yeah, it was really nice. And the only other people that were there besides the dog people were the guys that are walking trying to get fine money,
fine
you know,
money.
those things. And then I saw father, son come running in on New Year's Eve, like, and they jumped in that cold water. And they said that they do it every year.
Oh,
So-
Polar bears.
Polar bears.
But I think people are really happy, but I don't think it's like an overcrowd, I
Oh,
think it's
God,
a
no.
wonderful thing. And the only feedback that I heard was they wish the hours were longer. The woman who did who works for Down Under said she's a teacher, I guess, and so she would like to be able to come, you know, after school. And then several people said that they go to church, like I know I go to 11:30 Mass, and so I'm not taking the dog usually down there. I wouldn't take him beforehand because I'm Sunday.
Yeah, getting ready.
Right, so people would, you know, something to think about for next year is, since nobody's really there during the winter, maybe extend it till dusk. Just something to think about down the line. So
Well,
at
this
least,
pilot,
yeah, or at least on the weekends, yeah.
so that's
Thank you. I
Yeah.
think
no word, pretty good word. And just, like I said, I haven't seen it any more than 4 at one time.
I've been down 2 or 3 times, and I agree, it's always been quiet. The most I've ever seen is one other dog besides my dog. And I went down with my dog down to Greenwich to Todd's Point, and there was like 100 dogs.
Oh,
So, I mean, but that's a much bigger space.
Right,
than
right.
But it's also people walk that whole loop, and it's very different. So,
right.
it's nice. It's nice. It's quiet.
It's nice that those that are using it are appreciative of it. And I haven't, like I said, I haven't seen one
I
single
don't think it was
bag.
actually 100 dogs. I'm just exaggerating.
Maybe
Maybe it was 20. I don't know, but it was.
Relative to our pride beach.
Exactly.
Good.
And Jamie, you want to give a brief? I mean, I think Tilly Pond, the old holiday.
Yes, so we had our old fashioned holiday. I thought I might talk about this a lot, so I'm so sorry.
Yeah, you might.
did.
You
We
did.
did talk
I
about
did,
it.
okay.
Yeah.
So our
Forgot
next,
the fairy lights up at the back. and-
yes. Oh, wait, no, that was the tree lighting.
That was the tree
Everyone
lighting.
talked-
Oh,
Yes.
the old fashioned. No, you hadn't talked about
Yes,
it
so December 14th, we had an old fashioned holiday at Tilly Park, at Tilly Pond. And that was something we'd heard from multiple people, residents, staff members, that it was just something that they thought the whole town would enjoy. And I feel like that definitely was kind of proven. We had so many people walking in. It was a pretty cool sight to see, where people just started kind of coming out of the woodwork, literally. But we sold some stuff as Parks and Rec, like food and drink wise. We did hot cider and popcorn balls and old fashioned candy and some stuff for the kids. And then we had free activities for the kids around. We had a resident bring over it for the event and donate a fire pit with some Adirondack chairs, and we supplemented with some of our chairs. And then we kind of built the kids' activities around that, and had cookie decorating and writing letters to Santa and ornament decorating. And then that kind of supplemented with we decorated the park as best we could. Our parks crew did everything themselves, so they were absolutely amazing. We spent days over there decorating the ice hut. We had crew up on the roof dropping lights, and we decorated the chimney, and just anything we really could.
And a fireplace inside. It was
We had a fireplace going in the actual chimney and the ice hut. And we used our sound system again, so we had holiday music playing, and we had characters. We had a snowman and a reindeer walking around taking pictures with the kids. So I think overall it went really well. We thought we had probably 300 in attendance. We brought 100 each of all the kids' activities, and we ran out. So, they seem very well received. We definitely have some notes for next year, but I think overall it was an absolute blast. We had, spontaneous caroling
Great Carolyn.
that we were able to get started, which is something I wanted but I didn't think would actually happen.
It was
and
like
did.
Hallmark.
Oh, that was great, that was
Was-
really
And Mike was one of the singers.
Yeah, so I just want to say it was, I can't overstate, I mean, it was just an amazing event, and you guys did just a really lovely job. It was just, one of those events that, I can imagine if and we had my daughters in town, and we had our grandchildren, and I could just imagine, like, if we're fortunate enough and you guys, and there's an opportunity to continue to do this, it's the kind of thing I think that over the years, like when somebody's 50 years old, they'll look back and say, do you remember when we used to, it just really was that special. And the way it was set up, the lighting, we got there, it was kind of dusk, so it was light. Couldn't really appreciate the lighting, and then as it got darker, you look around,
Magical.
it was magical, it really was. So just wonderful, everybody that was there, and I'm still a little unhappy I got roped into caroling, but
Yeah, but it made it. It really did make it.
It was great.
And as people were getting hot cider, and there was people sitting by the fire inside the stone hut, and all of a sudden people just started singing in the park, and it was really beautiful.
I mean, the fireplace was just really,
It was beautiful.
really nice touch, actually seeing a fire in that fireplace.
I was gonna say, I've never seen a fire.
Been decades, I've had since.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
No, I don't think it's ever been a fire, but I was actually surprised it works.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
happened.
That was one of the things we had to make sure.
I was like,
So people had chairs all around it inside,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it was really
Our,
wonderful.
our cooking instructor that runs our kids' cooking class was the one who, she volunteered and did the cookie decorating with the kids. And she was probably one of my favorite of the notes we got after the event. And she said she spoke with one of the families at her table, and they said they had spent the whole day in New York City trying to give their kids the holiday experience, and then they got off the train and came over to our event and said that it was the experience that they were looking for to give the kids.
Oh,
That's great.
So
Yeah, that gives you chills.
I forwarded your email blast. So I have an au pair, and there's, the two dominant au pair agencies each have probably about 50 girls in town, and think of an au pair who's from another country who's missing their first Christmas probably away from home, and so the au pair coordinators were so excited that I forwarded it to them. So in the future, when you do family-oriented events, I would just encourage you to maybe include the au pair agencies. There's Cultural Care and Au
That's
Pair in
great.
America are the two big ones.
That's a good idea.
That's a great idea.
yeah, for Valentine's Day.
Yeah, all those
Yes.
things. I forwarded that stuff for Valentine's Day last year.
okay.
Yeah, so anytime you're doing things like that, I would just include them.
Fantastic.
And because those are always families with young kids too, and it gets everybody out, and they're always looking for activities.
Yeah.
It's a natural fit.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And then some-
Yes, so our next upcoming event is February 9th. It's a Saturday. It'll be our second annual Something Sweet. It's a dessert war and Valentine's Day gift boutique. It was a blast last year, so we're excited to do it again. We did it in the Mather Center last year. We'll do it there again in the cafeteria. Last year we only used half. This year we're planning to open the whole thing up because we attempted to open it up in the middle of the event last year, so which was good. We had more people than we expected. So we'll have local eateries. We're only inviting places local in Darien, so we try to keep it special like that. So it truly is the best dessert in Darien. And they can provide samples of any dessert of their choice, and then people get to try the desserts and vote on which one they want to be their favorite and win. Chocolate Works won last year, so they're coming back to try to win a second year in a row. And then we also have gift vendors selling all different kinds of stuff, so you can delight your sweetheart and your sweet tooth.
Whoa, that sounds like something.
You're in such the right job.
Yeah, she is.
Finally have use for my 20 months, so. It's from 12 to 3, Saturday, February 9th, and we also will have free kids activities again. Last year we did cookie decorating, but it was brought up that was a lot of sweets. So we're gonna do Valentine's Day card decorating this year.
That's a nice idea.
Yes, I think that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, there were a ton of sweets.
Yes. Yeah, it was a little overkill
Yeah,
on the
lots of
dessert
sugar.
thing.
But the kids liked it.
So I think that'll still be kind of a fun little artsy thing. We'll have face painting again, which the kids go crazy for, And we'll also do our pick your prize drawing again, which was really successful last year. We had a lot of items donated, and it was a lot of fun. So we'll do that as well. I think that's it.
Great job. Great job,
Bring
Dean.
that, bring that in.
Yeah.
I think we're good.
We're
And
good,
it's
okay.
on yours.
On to me, okay, well, we're up to 9 o'clock, so I'll keep this short. Pam and I were able to get together really for the first time yesterday with the holidays and work schedules and whatever, but we spent a couple of hours together, just, talking about how we're gonna work together going forward, coming up with some ideas. One of the things that we've agreed to do is to put together sort of like a calendar of work, so that, all the things that have to happen during the year, so we know, okay, January, we have to talk about fees, and, what months we have to talk about the budget, and just so that we all have sort of a working document that we can be thinking about as the year progresses, what needs to be addressed at once, so it's not the sort of like, I need that for myself, having just taken over, just this like, oh shoot, we're supposed to, we're supposed to put that on the
Yeah.
agenda, and we didn't, or whatever, so we'll be working on getting that.
And I think we're
Getting
looking
that
at it
together.
as a whole, right, we'll put that on the agenda, so that all of us, with all the experience that we have in the room
Right.
too, that, it'll help us align the months in terms of what you do traditionally.
Right, all the different things, so nothing gets forgotten, so we're doing that. And then we'd also like to, dust off the master plan, we started having some discussions about, there's so many items in it, clearly we can't tackle them all at once. We have a couple of capital improvement projects really going on now, reasonably speaking, that's probably all we want to tackle for the moment. But there were a lot of other types of deliverables in the master plan, some that are the responsibility of Pam and her staff, but there may be things we need to be thinking about, but really start thinking about those items and how we might prioritize them and set some objectives for ourselves for the coming, year or two, so that, we kind of have a vision of where we want to go and I'd like to see us set some priorities as a commission of really what it is, we hope to accomplish as a team. Rather than just kind of coming every month and, oh yeah, we gotta approve with these, we gotta do this, we gotta do that, really where are we trying to go, and almost have, a vision or almost a mission statement, or there is a mission statement for the department, I'm not
Right.
sure that it's the mission statement for a commission, maybe it really should be both, but just really what are we trying to do here and work together. And the other thing that I'm hopeful we can do, and I know it's difficult with people's scheduling, but if possible, if we could come up with a date that works for everybody, or at least most everybody, probably on a Saturday, maybe in the early spring, I think it would be wonderful if we could get together as a group and go visit at least the major parks. I don't know that we could get all of them in one morning, but to go visit some of our key parks and have Pam and ideally at least some of the staff, if we can get them to join us, highlight, what they see as some of the challenges or the issues that we need to be
Nice if we
to
could
be
do
thinking about that. We used to do this when I was on the Board of Finance, we used to do it jointly with the Board of Ed during budget season, and we'd take around mostly to the schools. And the director of facilities would really point out the capital projects and the things that were needed to be done. So when they're talking about, when it was like a portable needed to be refurbished, they would take us in the portable, and you're like, okay, yeah, this is gross. So it would be that idea that we could see them, but really understand our parks better. I know personally, there's some parks I know very, very well, and frankly, there's some I don't know very well. It's just, I think, what everybody's personal preferences are, whether their kids play baseball or what that is. So I'm hoping that we can find a time that would work for everybody, and I know it'll be tricky, but anyway, we did it with the Board of Finance, somehow we got a school bus, but I don't know if there's, that gets
A small van.
tricky or something, and whether there's money for that, so we might just have to carpool in a couple of vehicles or something, but, so I'd like to at least get people, hopefully, that's something that people would be amenable to doing,
Yeah,
and
I think
hopefully,
it's a great idea.
if we get the right weather, we could have a nice morning and maybe finish up with a picnic together or
Oh,
something,
that's a
so.
great idea.
The paddle hut.
Perfect.
Field trip. A field trip, but I think it's important that we really know.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I think we should take our new tent and we set it up on Short Lane property and have a picnic out on Short Lane.
Let's put it up successfully first.
You want some lights?
So really that's, that's
See
what I
what
have for this evening,
Let's go.
just, getting through the holidays and unfortunately December, January are really frantic times at work, so just getting my arms around everything, and look forward to working with everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tonight, so I will
Can I
entertain.
mention one thing? So just because we are in the construct of the Weed Beach project that we're doing, the Land Trust is sponsoring an upcoming event on Thursday, April 4th. It is being co-sponsored by Save the Sound, and it is really it's a panel, it's gonna be at the library, and it's about the sea level rise. It's gonna have planning and zoning, Jamie Stevenson and Terry Wood. It's gonna have a whole broader, and given the fact that we're doing pear tree and we're looking at this, it's extremely relevant, so I'll just encourage everyone to put it on your calendar for,
Tell me
what's
it's
the time?
Thursday, April 4th at 7 p.m.
At the library?
at the library. I think there's even gonna be a cocktail thing at the beginning.
Ooh, there you go.
See this. Yeah, that'd be great, very relevant.
I mean, it's relevant for a lot of our properties, for our whole town.
Love a plan that would place me.
Yeah, maybe.
Anything else anybody have?
Like Stanford does have a plan in place, Barry doesn't have a plan in place apparently, so this is part of getting that going.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Mary Louise. Yes. He's ready. Okay. Thank you. All in favor?